welcome to More Music Please Quarantine Beat. It's me, your host, NK, trying something new in the intro here. Today I had a great chat with my good buddy Andy Gladding. He is a radio engineer and terrific musician, and he's going to tell you all about it. And we talk about New York City and kind of tell our wildest stories of living there and the celebrities that we've run into by accident over the years. And it's a really fun episode. I hope you enjoy. And as always, you can email me if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. moremusic.podcast@gmail.com. Follow the show on Facebook and Instagram, and tell a buddy if you like it. All right, on the line with me tonight, it's been a long time coming. He keeps coming up on the program, so I felt like I had to have him on the program sooner or later. It's my good friend, keyboard extraordinaire, radio engineer with way too many jobs. It's Andrew J. Gladding. Welcome to the show, Andy.
What's going on, MK? You sound lovely over the radio. Your voice is magnificent.
Thank you. I keep getting that, which is really, really lovely. I get that as like an unsolicited compliment a lot, that I have like a radio voice. So thank you. I'm glad that I do. I'm glad it's hanging in there, even though I'm not technically a radio person anymore.
Well, that never leaves you. The microphone travels with you. The organization doesn't matter. The attitude is the radio. That's what it is.
Yeah, for sure. So you are in radio in a different part of the industry. You're an engineer, and I feel like you do many things. So yeah, tell me about your radio career before we jump into everything else.
Sure. Well, I got into radio accidentally. I mean, my grandfather he worked for Grumman on Long Island. So when I was a little kid, he always had all this stuff from Grumman down in his house, in his basement, and he was a ham radio enthusiast. So I was always surrounded by all this equipment, but I didn't really know how any of it worked. It was just, it was just there, and it looked really cool. And there were all these dials and knobs and meters, and he passed away when I was young, but I remember him still showing me, how to turn things on and off, and that you could listen to different radio stations from the other side of the world with this little coat hanger antenna, and then on a shortwave radio, and I thought it was really cool. And then that kind of got away from me, as I got older. I got really into music production. I wanted to be a mix engineer. I was going to make tons of records. I wanted to just that was going to be my thing. I was going to be like the next Bob Clearmountain or the Ted Jensen. I was going to just put records together all the time. So when I went to go look at the college that I went to, Hofstra University, at I guess the Q&A session when you're a prospective student, I asked Hofstra if they had a audio production program. Of course, they said, "Oh yeah, it's great. We have a great music production program here. Totally come." So I registered, decided to go to Hofstra, registered, got my dorm room, and went to go enroll for classes, and I found out they didn't really have one.
What the fuck?
But at the same time, I'd also, right around the same week that I found out that they didn't really have as big of a program as I thought they did, as compared to other schools what's the one down in Tennessee, like Belmont University, where people go to become recording engineers.
Yeah.
Hofstra didn't have that, but what they did have was they had a really killer campus radio station. So I said, well, you know what? I'm here. I'm already registered. Might as well go check out the radio station thing. Let's see what this is all about. And I really liked it because I found out you could you could have an on-air personality. As you know, you can be somebody else. You can be yourself. But also there's all the same technology that you were, similar technology to being an audio mix guy, except you're just doing it with transmitters and, and a little bit of a different thought process and a different output, a different product, but it's kind of like the same concept. So I said, oh, this will work. So that kind of launched my crazy, weird radio career, where I've worked in New York radio for about 23 years now, and some overlap at a TV, and it's been really a really interesting experience. You get to meet a lot of really fun people and work behind the scenes, and that's my gig, man. I love it.
That's funny. Yeah. I mean, as you know, I had kind of a similar, just accidental backslide into a radio career. I feel like, especially, this is the 21st century. Radio is maybe not the first media people think of when they go for their news and their entertainment. It's, perhaps I don't know if I'd say it's dying, but it's definitely not in its heyday. So, yeah, it's a funny thing to make a career out of. And I feel like, it happens accidentally for a lot of us.
Well, it's funny. Just the concept of radio is the same. It's so the audio industry in terms of audio content is stronger than ever because as long as you have people driving in their cars, you will have a need for for audio only content. You really shouldn't watch, Netflix in your car.
Right.
I do it every once in a while, but you shouldn't do that.
Yeah, you're the worst. But
really, they're programming for people that are, not everybody wants to watch something. Audio only programming is actually gaining in popularity right now. I mean, I've never seen so many people interested in podcasts and specialty programs such as the one that we're on, that there's a real market for it. So companies like Westwood One, which are now owned by Cumulus, that used to be network-only stations that or a network-only provider that would provide content to radio stations. I mean, they've launched a podcast platform. iHeartRadio did the same thing. They have a whole podcasting platform where they're either syndicating podcasting through their podcast platform, or they're even bringing it into their talk radio environments. One of the stations I work for, 570 AM and 970 AM, they're taking a podcaster who's a young guy, 25-year-old political gentleman by the name of Charlie Kirk, and they're bringing him over to AM radio to cross popularity. So the medium of the traditional broadcast medium of an antenna tower on top of a building broadcasting on FM or AM, that is changing. But the content behind the technology, that there's a hunger and a thirst for that's really, I think, at an all-time high. Yeah. Especially with everything that's going on in our world right now. There's a lot of stuff to talk about, and people have a lot of opinions, Yeah,
for sure. For sure. But yeah, just terrestrial radio is funny, and it feels maybe the industry overblows how panicked they are, because I feel that was always a party line at my station was radio doesn't make money the way it used to. And maybe that was just an excuse not to pay me more.
Well, they're not wrong about that. The problem is that, and it's not radio's fault so much, that what happened between the 90s really was the peak of what they call the radio money grab, because you had a lot of really popular syndicated shows. You had Howard Stern was on terrestrial radio. He was a financial powerhouse. I mean, Stern brought in millions upon millions of dollars for CBS and Westwood One as a talent. You had other national syndicated shows. Rush Limbaugh is still going. I mean, those Hannity, those shows bring in lots of money. Even Seacrest. I mean, iHeart Seacrest platform makes tons of money. But between the 90s and today, a little thing called the internet came out and stole, for lack of a better word, or absorbed a large chunk of the advertising money that would have normally been just for radio stations.
Sure.
So they had kind of a nice thing going where radio got 30% of the marketing budget, TV got, let's say, 50, and then print got the other 20. That was kind of the way it worked for about 15, 20, 30 years. Well, when Google came along and said, well, we'll just repackage the whole thing for you, and we'll give you a homepage buys and a splash here, and we'll cater the search results to highlight your company. How do you compete with that?
Yeah.
So Google's marketing platform, and Google as a company, their real financial strength is the fact that they're an advertising platform that can completely dominate that field, because they give you everything. They resell the packaging, the airtime, they put it all together, and they say, here you go, and just enter your credit card, you're done. We'll see you next week.
For sure.
So that's where the money went. So it's really up to the terrestrial radio group has to be very creative. And what it does is, you can't be lazy. You can't lean on a large advertiser like a Walmart or a Home Depot or a car, like a big car national brand. You got to find those local businesses that are willing to support it, and the mid-sized regional businesses that are into it, passionate about it, know that you're going to be able to connect the listener with their brand, with their marketing. Yeah. So I think that's where the real challenge lies, but it's certainly not impossible. I think people just got so used to being lazy that they were like, oh, wait a minute, now I got to go out and sell. This isn't fun.
Which is funny because it took so long, I feel for example, for a lot of these companies to jump onto podcasts. And it was so obvious that this is the thing. This is the thing that people want, that, it's such a great, homegrown kind of platform that anybody, any jerk like me can just set up in their closet and start making a podcast. And I'm 10 years late to the party here, but a lot of stations, not to keep bringing it back to the one I worked at, but they were just starting to dabble in maybe we should do some kind of podcasting thing, offer our studios or create some kind of content of our own. It's yeah, you should have been doing that already.
Well, what is funny, one thing I always say, from an engineering perspective, if you're going to do anything in terms of broadcast product, you have to do it right. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of companies will sometimes skimp on the technology, or they skimp on the production, because they just want to get the content out there. Well, look, we have a podcast too. Well, is it good? Is anybody going to listen to it? Does it sound good? Is it available? Can you download it? Is it streamable? Do you have a congestion issue if too many people are listening at once? But a lot of those parameters are not taken into consideration. So they're right. The people that are late to the party are suddenly saying, well, how do we go about doing this? It's probably why they never really did in the first place, because it was like, we don't really know how to do it. We're making money on our existing stuff. We just got Dial a Mattress to advertise with us, so we're fine.
Oh, I know, it's daunting. It's really daunting. I was like trying to help like put together this podcast network, and like I made like a demo podcast of like, an idea that I had, and like, I threw in whatever ideas I had. Like all of the younger people in the company were kind of like, here are some things we can do, and like, really doing our homework and trying it out. But it was, it really came down to just like the higher ups being terrified to commit to it, and, terrified of like doing something wrong. So just nothing ever got done.
Yeah. And that shows a lack of ability for risk. So that's either coming from, there's either not a whole lot of money available. So companies that are operating with a very small, operating profit margin will be less likely to take risks. And it also, it also shows a lack of confidence in the people they have working there. I mean, trust the vision of your employees. If you have young people working for you that are organized and kind of have a general idea of what's going on, chances are they're going to deliver. Yeah. It's up to you as the industry veteran or the middle to upper manager to make sure it's a monetizable concept and make it work. You can't just say, oh, these kids have a great idea, but I don't know. Well, use your 30 years of experience in the business to figure out how to fill in the gap.
Yeah,
I think just don't want to do that. They're afraid to make the wrong move.
Well, they're afraid to make the wrong move, and they're also afraid to give up any level of control. So, like, if a team of 30-somethings comes to them and say, "Hey, we did all this research, like, we've got this idea," and there's this resistance to incorporating an idea that didn't come from one of the I don't know. I don't want to sound like I'm talking smack on any particular company, because I think this is a problem with a lot of especially like radio stations are such an industry that can be run by people who have been doing things a certain way for a very long time and are afraid to give up any control. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Do you think there's any validity to that?
I couldn't agree with you more. A lot of radio stations are kind of like, you could equate it to like Grey Gardens.
Yeah.
At one time it was a huge thriving, I see them a lot as an engineer. A lot of times I'm either stripping down a facility or moving stations in and out of different facilities. And you can see the footprint of what used to be a really profitable enterprise with a big building. There's one, and I'm not going to use the call letters, but there's one in New Jersey that comes to mind where the structure is still there and there are transmitters running out of the back. But it used to be locally programmed, and there are studios there. They've all been gutted and stripped. And you can look at this and say, man, this place was like a cash machine. This must have been like bumping with people and artists coming from the city for interviews and bands playing live on the air. Now it's just a stripped hulk with a building with a power meter, a couple of lights on, and they're rebroadcasting a satellite format from California. So
yeah, it's weird.
You say to yourself, this a lack of a desire to take risk, coupled with some poor future financial planning, really led to this. Whereas this could probably still be a profitable operation and be happening, employing people locally. And instead they say, just put a whatever format on it, and just let it be automatic, and we'll just, whatever revenue we can get out of it locally, we'll find a few people that'll pay.
Yeah, that's
it's kind of
what it is.
Waste of an opportunity.
Yeah,
it's a really wasted opportunity. It's a shame, because it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. Well, it's cool talking to you about this stuff. We don't really go deep on radio very often, because I know you more from your music life, which I would also love to know more about. You are a dope-ass keyboardist, great singer. You're kind of the de facto, like, on-stage leader of CFR. We usually look to you for the cues. And, how did you start playing music and get to that point?
Well, music was a requirement in my family. I come from a family of a male downline of musicians.
Yeah,
so
your dad shreds on the sax.
Your great grandfather was a musician. Your great grandfather was a musician and had a band. Your grandfather had a band, and my father was a music teacher. So there was no getting out of the music thing. I think if I had played like basketball or something, he would have been very disappointed. So the music thing was going to happen. So I started playing probably when I was in kindergarten. And again, it took me a while to connect with that because you're playing. I think I was playing trombone in the elementary school band, and trombone when in the '90s wasn't cool. Trombone's cool now because of Trombone Shorty, but you didn't see it. You couldn't see it back then. You were in the trombone section. So I was like, what am I doing this for? But then, as I got into middle school and into high school, I discovered the Hammond B3, which I think is just the absolute coolest instrument ever made because it's big and heavy. And I always tell people, you got to be, in this day and age, you got to have friends to be a keyboard player in a band. You really do. You can't be a bad guy because nobody will help you move all this equipment. That's why you got to be nice if you're a drummer too. You got to be nice if you're a drummer because you want people to help you carry the stuff to your car at the end of the night. But I discovered the Hammond organ, and I said, "Oh, this is cool!" And it's got this rotating Leslie speaker, and oh man, it sounds really interesting. And then you realize that that's the sound you hear in a lot of rock recordings from pretty much the early 1960s on up, and you say that's what that instrument is with that crazy sounding rotating thing in the background. Oh, that's what the Beatles were using on My Guitar Gently Weeps, putting the organ through a Leslie speaker. And oh, that's what they used on Whiter Shade of Pale. And oh, that's what the Deep Purple had. And it suddenly it all kind of falls into place, and you say that's the instrument. I want that to be my voice. That's my voice.
Yeah.
The singing thing was always secondary. I never really wanted to be a singer in CFR. It just kind of happened that way because it was like, well, who wants to sing? I don't know. Well, what do we know words to? I don't know. Oh, we'll figure it out.
Well, that's what's fun about CFR is like we're all the singer of CFR.
And that's the best part about CFR because everybody gets a chance to sing.
Yeah.
You all get a chance to be. What fun is it? What fun is it to play in a band if you don't get to at some point in the night step up into that spotlight and take a tune and just crush it?
And we're all equally happy to like sing back up and like fucking do some oohs. Like it's so much fun. It's such a good like group dynamic. And the trombone thing I want to go back to for a sec because I played trumpet. That was my like 4th grade instrument pick that I played in the school band. And same, like I wish I stuck with it. And like I thought it was pretty cool at the time. Like I picked it because I was like, I don't know, this is like kind of a chill instrument. It's like small enough to be portable but loud. I get to be like I get to make a lot of noise with it. And I was good. I got like first chair in like Northern Regionals and stuff. I probably should have just gone to college and kept playing trumpet and I'd be like, doing a lot better now. But I'm like looking at fucking Lewis Cole and stuff and I'm like, shit, like I should have kept playing the trumpet. It was about to have a resurgence. Who knew?
Lewis Cole blows my mind because that guy, first of all, he's real super creative.
Yeah.
But he's a killer arranger. His arrangements are great. You're like, whoa, man, where'd you come up with this?
I know. Yeah, there's so much detail and just like little weird, like weird little shit that he throws in there and incorporates like so many instruments. He's got a fucking orchestra in his living room in some of these videos. It's like, yeah, it's so interesting and good. And there's a lot of bands that are using horn sections now that, I'd probably be touring around in a cool band if I kept with trumpet. But
as opposed to singing lead for our semi-cool band.
Well, I was going to say, instead of playing like in a cool band that basically just plays at Snugs.
Exactly. It's an easy commute, though. It's real easy to get home at the end of the night.
Yeah, definitely. No, I have a blast playing with you guys. I mean, maybe I should explain, because this is a podcast that ostensibly not just people that know me listen to. So, like I said, Andy, you've come up on a few episodes now. I talked to Kasai and Joe Marcinek, who are both like extended members of the CFR family. And, of course, like you and the other guys came up because it was like, oh, how'd you get involved with CFR? And most of the time the answer was like, oh, I met Andy. And like, so we start talking. So, I also joined CFR a few years ago now because my other band, Loco Freak, was kind of on a hiatus. And, I knew you guys, I knew you from around, and you just kind of absorbed me into the band, which was great. And, we're still doing it.
I think I'm not sure if you know this, but the fun fact about CFR is I went through the list the other day. The band has had probably 38 or 39 official members in the last 18 years.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds about right.
Not because we kick anybody out. Once you're an official member of CFR, you can come and play at any gig we have. You just have to let me know ahead of time so we know how many mics to bring. But
exactly.
you are in the band and you're an official member of the band, then you can come and play a gig. partly because that's just kind of I think that's really good mojo, and the other reason is because we play a lot of the same songs for 18 years. Mm-hmm. So that's a side effect of that. Most likely, we'll remember something that you will know.
Yeah, maybe someday we'll have a gig where all 39 members show up.
We got close to it we had a reunion about I want to say about a year and a half ago.
Yeah, I wasn't able to make it, unfortunately.
I think it was 2017. Or beginning of 2018, where we had like a reunion, and I want to say 20 or so members showed up. That was pretty fun. That was really neat.
Did you get everybody on stage at once? Because I don't remember why, but I couldn't make it that night. I was down in the city.
Well, you have to use the term stage very lightly. We did it at a friend of ours. We call, if you're not actually in the band, but if you're an associate of the band, you're in what's called the CFR Familia. So you don't have to be a musician to be associated or affiliated with CFR. You could just be in the CFR family. And because initially CFR was made of 2 guys from California and 2 guys from New York. So there's a lot of the LA attitude in the very early roots of the band when we first started playing. And a lot of the associated folks we had, a lot of them were transplants to New York from California. So the La Familia was often out and about, kind of behind the scenes, making stuff happen. And one of our buddies actually had a restaurant on the Lower East Side. So stage is a very generous term for what we had that night. It was more of a beautiful free-for-all of food, booze, and people sort of standing in between playing instruments.
That sounds
pretty
incredible.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm very sad I couldn't make it. Okay, it's time for everybody's favorite part of the show, the part where I talk about real estate. Real estate, it's COVID times. Everybody's trying to get out of their houses and buy a bigger one with more property somewhere, because we all realize all of a sudden how important it is to have a home that you love. And I can't recommend a better realtor than Susan Barnett. She is a licensed associate broker with Keller Williams Upstate Country Properties at 31 Main Street, Oneonta, New York. She's a member of the Otsego, Delaware Board of Realtors, as well as a New York State Multiple Listing Service. And you can find her at upstatecountryrealty.com. Why Susan? Well, because she's nice as hell. She's also tough as nails. She will get you what you want, where you want it, for the price you want it. And if you are looking for something that she can't help you find, maybe it's out of her area, she's got the network to hook it up. She will refer you to somebody who will get you exactly what you want. Let me tell you a little bit about Delaware, Otsego County, Oneonta, that whole region. It is fucking beautiful up there. It is insanely beautiful. And, Susan made the move a few years ago from Ulster County up there. It's, it's a little bit further upstate, but it's still accessible to everything. There's amazing community up there. And the reason she left is because she wanted a bigger house, more property for less money. She spent less than she would have spent to buy, a much smaller place down in this area, because this area is overblown at this point. Everybody knows about it, secrets out, and you can't get anything good for a good price anymore. So unless you've got millions of dollars to throw at a house, you're just going to have to compromise, and you don't want to do that. You want someplace that you truly love to be, and Delaware County, Otsego County, that's where you're going to get it. So hit up Susan, see what there is to offer. She's got this gorgeous classic farmhouse on this beautiful giant yard that she's, landscaped the way she wants, and there's outbuildings, and her partner has a studio on the property. I'm telling you, it's the quality of life up there is out of control. It's so beautiful. Quiet nights, dark skies, good neighbors, a lot of arts and community and culture happening right there. And Susan will help you get your foot in the door. So hit her up, upstatecountryrealty.com. Let's talk New York City a little bit, because I know you are splitting time. I mean, you split time between a lot of places right now, but you're part upstate and part in the city. And I know the other guys also have roots down there. I've lived there, and I've never really discussed New York City so much on the podcast. I mean, me and Kasai touched on it, but I feel like it's such a rich topic, and I've never really had a chance to discuss it. So let's talk about the city. Where do you're living in Brooklyn, right? That's where your place is?
Yeah, I've been in Brooklyn for almost 20 years now, and that actually started because of the guys from CFR. I met them when I was 19. Met Brad Kelly and Stephen Camarillo when I was still in my sophomore year of college, and we had met through another band I was playing with. It was together for a very short period of time called The Now. And all these guys lived in Queens and Brooklyn. And I thought this was just the coolest thing, because like being a young kid from Long Island, and suddenly you meet these guys that are a little older, and they all have established themselves in the city. They were bartenders and professionals and artists, and surrounded by all these really cool people back in 2002 when things were really bumping. It was like, this is great. So that was sort of my intro to New York, and Brooklyn especially. And I thought it was going to be just a very kind of a temporary living situation for me. And then fast forward 20 years, and I own a house down here, and it's been a really wild ride. But Brooklyn and the city as a whole, but Brooklyn in particular, has experienced this very unusual shift in the last 15 to 20 years, as people moved out of Manhattan, as it became more expensive, sort of trotted into Brooklyn. And certain neighborhoods that at one point would have been pretty dangerous, or just places that were not really mainstream, became, as they say, they use the term gentrified, or became popular, and we were almost for lack of a better term, renovated.
Yeah.
So but at the same time, in some cases, the charm of the neighborhood, or most of the population that was originally there, didn't necessarily have to leave. So you have these beautiful neighborhoods that are multicultural and mixed, and like my neighborhood, which is over by Brownsville. It's called Ocean Hill. I mean, there's a couple of community gardens that have actually flourished because of COVID-19, because people have no commercial spaces to hang out at. So they've been using these little community spaces and parks. And I was driving down Broadway a couple in Brooklyn a couple of weeks ago, and on one corner there was a salsa band playing. Another corner there was a brass band out in one of the community gardens. Then on another corner there was a punk rock band that was just had a little impromptu show in a parking lot. I'm saying to myself, this is so diverse and cool. And I don't know if you necessarily would have this in other parts of the country, or just the attitude of New York. So I think it's a really interesting place to be, with a lot of spirit that has not got diminished because of COVID-19.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear. I mean, so I lived there. What am I, 31? So it was over 10 years ago now, because I was fresh out of high school when I moved to the city. I went to the New York Film Academy for like 30 seconds. I don't know if you know that about me or not.
Oh yeah.
But I went for like one semester. I was living in Brooklyn in Sunset Park with a friend of mine who was also living there, and just like working at Applebee's, and just like, just doing that thing that some kids from like the East Coast, we were from Connecticut, we were like, we're just going to go like live in the city. It's just go to like live in the city, And we did, and had a wonderful time. And even after I stopped going to the Film Academy, I just got a job at St. Mark's Comics, and like lived there just for like, a year and a half, like just being 18 and doing drugs and having sex and just learning about life and the universe and stuff, and it was awesome. I mean,
Party.
Yeah, it was, I describe it as being my freshman year of college, even though I wasn't technically in college. Like, I just did all the things that you're supposed to do when you're first out on your own, but instead I was actually like living on my own and working, and like, I was probably pretty sheltered coming from Connecticut, even though obviously my parents were very progressive and weren't trying to like hide the nature of the world from us or anything, but it was still like eye-opening to be all of a sudden in such a diverse place. Like Sunset Park at the time was not really gentrified at all, and we had a great, God, our apartment was great. It was like half a block from the fucking N train stop. Like, we literally could hear the train go by. Like, I would walk out the door, across the street and be at the fucking train station. It was so ideal. And it was like we were like above a flower shop. The neighborhood was a lot of immigrants, a lot of families, a few like Spanish language churches. Like, it really was not, you'd have to like walk a couple blocks to get to like the Dunkin' Donuts, Baskin Robbins neighborhood, and there wasn't even a Starbucks yet. Like, and it was awesome. It was, yeah, I mean, like I said, it was my freshman year of college, and there were still neighborhoods. Like, I remember one eye-opening experience that I had when I was a little, dumbass 18-year-old Connecticut white girl living in the city. I went to hang out with my friend one night after we closed the shop, and St. Mark's Comics closed at 2 a.m. was the cool thing about St. Mark's Comics. Like, we would be open until 2 a.m. some nights. And we would hang out after, because we're 18, we got nothing else going on. So we took the subway down to her place. I can't remember what neighborhood of Brooklyn she was in, but she was nowhere near me. It was like very, very long train ride to whatever neighborhood she was in, and she had a much longer walk from the station. So at the time, my part of my style that I thought was really cool was I was wearing like, you know, those like red paisley bandanas like over my forehead. I would like roll them up and like wear them as like a head wrap, you know, like not like over my whole head, but just like a little band across my bangs. Like I just, whatever, I thought I was cool. So that was like my look. And we're walking through my friend's neighborhood deep in Brooklyn at like 3 a.m. And these little boys across the street point at me and start yelling, "She's a blood! She's a blood!" And I was like, ah! Ripped the bandana off. No. Never wore that shit again. I was like, oh my God. Like I didn't even consider that.
I mean, or you could have like calmly strolled across the street with your arms sort of hanging down like, "Yo, what's up? What's up? What you know about that? What you know about that?"
No, I had enough sense to know that, I needed to get that shit off my head stat.
Yeah, it does happen down there from time to time. It is a little bit of a cultural awakening for sure.
Yeah, I just didn't even consider it. I was so, like I said, I was fucking sheltered. Like, when in Rome, you gotta fucking take the red bandana off your head.
Exactly. One of the depths of Brooklyn. Be careful.
Finally got a reusable straw.
Yeah, what are you drinking over there? That sounds tasty.
I'm just finishing off my little vodka club soda.
So you're lucky. So I'm still at work. I have to have the vodka club soda without the vodka. I don't think we're allowed to do that here. The university would probably frown upon that happening in the studio.
I'm sure they would. You're being very responsible. Yeah, I don't always have a drink with my podcast, but it's evening. It's a friend. I was like, yeah, fucking make a vodka drink.
Why not? Yep, makes the stories more interesting.
Yeah, so tell me about what have you seen in your 20 years living in Brooklyn? Any weird times for you?
You know, it's funny. I call the first half of my years in Brooklyn like the lost years because there was no Facebook yet, and camera phones were out, but they took these little tiny, grainy, crappy pictures, and so it was kind of that weird in between time that like. You didn't carry around like a disposable camera anymore because who does that? That was for like high school or college. But you didn't really take pictures on your phone because nobody really did that. So there was a good 3 or 4 years I don't really have any photography of, but I know I did a lot of cool things. And I keep trying to remember what they are, and I'm like, I think I did that. Or did I just dream that up? Like one night I was in the Lower East Side hanging out at one of my favorite places at the time, this bar called Welcome to the Johnsons. Welcome to the Johnsons was a really great spot because number one, our bass player Steven worked there. So he was just nice, always nice to see Steven and hang out with him because he's just one of the world's greatest guys. Such a sweet dude. He would sit at the bar and then the strangest thins would happen. Like a girl one night came in who was new to the neighborhood, named Stephanie, and she came in with a bunch of her girlfriends, and we were all chatting at the bar. And then years later, I would find out that Stephanie would become Lady Gaga.
Oh my God! Hey.
Somewhere in one of my flip phones, I have a picture of the two of us hanging out. Like we were not, just short of being like, "Hey, give me your number, friends," but somebody you'd see at the bar and wave at. The guy that Luke, who she wrote that first album about, the Fame Monster or whatever that is.
Yeah.
Worked at the burrito shop around the corner. So I always laugh because every time I see, pictures of him now, he's got a show on Sirius XM, like a metal show. He's a really nice guy. But I always remember being like, oh, that's Luke from the San Locos around the corner. He had like the best burritos, And when I'm down there and a friend of mine comes to the bar, just grabs me by the arm and pulls me outside. I said, where are we going? What's the matter? Like the way somebody would pull you if the place was on fire, that kind of urgency. And says, don't ask, just come with me. It pulls me a block away to this club called the Rofco, and past the bouncer. The bouncer sort of waves me. What's going on? She goes, I just found out the Blues Travelers doing a secret show here.
Ooh.
And I got in. I said, no way. And about 10 seconds later, John Popper comes walking right past me. I'm like, well, that was cool.
Fuck yeah.
Like, it was such a great thing. Like stuff like that would just happen. I'm not going to say it happened like every single Friday or Thursday or Wednesday night, but the weird and the best, and anybody who lives in New York City can tell you the coolest things will always happen on a Monday night.
Yeah, I had some funny celebrity encounters working at the comic store too that are now flooding back to me. My favorite, I think, is the the time I was working the front desk, and like, you know, my boss, like part of the job was like, he was like, you know, if anybody comes in and is like acting shifty, keep an eye on them. Like people do try to steal shit. So this guy comes in and he's acting super weird. He's like this tall, gangly dude. And, you know, like dressed kind of funny, just like a weird style and like looking really shifty. And I'm like keeping an eye on him because I'm like, something's up with this guy. And, you know, he eventually like buys a couple comics and leaves, no big deal. And my manager comes over and he's like, that was the guy from the Counting Crows.
Oh, that's really funny.
It's fucking, what's his face?
Adam Duritz?
Yeah, Adam Duritz. He's like, that was Adam Duritz from the Counting Crows. I was like, oh, that's why he looked shifty, because he didn't want to be recognized. I thought he was trying to steal something.
I think Adam Duritz sleeps with the nightlight on. I just kind of have that feeling that he can't be left in a dark room, you know, for too long, or else he'll start to cry and shudder and maybe like write another song that we don't want to listen to.
I don't know what you're talking about. I fucking love Long December. You know this.
Well, I do.
I had no beef with the Counting Crows. Yeah, I always feel like I maybe wasted, not wasted, but like I was in the city a little too soon. And as I say that, I also don't believe it, because I'm glad that I was there, you know, 12 years ago or whatever it was, like before it got even more, because it's always changing. It's always, you know, the real estate prices are going up and new businesses are moving in, and, you know, the old ones that you grew to know and love are getting pushed out. So like, I'm glad that I was there earlier rather than later, but I also was too young to go to most bars or go to a lot of things. Like I was so young, I was under 21, and like, of course I had a couple of bars where I got to know people and could get in, but like I didn't really have the full range of experience of like going to bars and going to clubs and stuff. But I also, you know, when you were talking about your kind of Lower East Side stories, like that reminded me of like what a neighborhood vibe there was like on St. Mark's Place. And of course, it's all completely different now. Like all the businesses that were there are different businesses now for the most part. And all the people who were there are no longer there. But like, you know, that was what really surprised me about being like a young, you know, fresh out of Connecticut, you know, wide-eyed girl, like working in the East Village for the first time, was like, I kind of expected the city to feel more anonymous, but the longer I worked there, the more I was like, oh, like, you know, so-and-so across the street hooks me up with discounts, and, you know, so I go over and buy my little lunch from so-and-so, and like, you know, you just, it feels like a small town, like, even though it's, you know, one of the biggest cities on the planet.
Yeah, that's definitely true. It is kind of weird how a community will form and you become part of it without even realizing it.
Yeah. I mean, even stuff like seeing the same people on the subway every day. It's like, oh, yep, you have roughly the same commute as me.
I thought I had a glitch in the Matrix today. I was driving up by one of the AM transmitter sites, and a week ago I got stuck behind this really old sort of like a kit car. Like it looks like a really fancy old car, but it's not. It's just something like people, you know, put together in their garage. They order them off of a catalog. And today I got stuck behind the same exact car. I'm like, this is like weird deja vu, you know? So your environment will definitely suck you in, for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, like anytime that you spend time in the same area, you start to like notice the people who also spend time in that area in those times, and sometimes you make little friendships with them. And yeah, like that was what really struck me. And that's what I miss, you know, when I think about like the city, because I don't particularly miss it most of the time. I love where I live. I love the Hudson Valley and, you know, all of the open space and fresh air and all of that. And when I do go back down to the city to visit, I'm frequently like, I don't know, like I feel a little bit like grimy and just like enclosed here. I don't know that I would necessarily want to live there again, but I do miss that feeling of just like everybody kind of looking out for each other and like knowing little weird secrets. Like there used to be, I thought I was so cool for this. There used to be an apartment on St. Mark's on that block that I somehow like met somebody some night that, you know, they brought me up to the rooftop of this apartment building. And after that, I just kind of always would be able to get onto the roof. Like it was a building where you would need to get buzzed in, but it tended to be busy enough that like if I hung out there for a couple of minutes, somebody would come in and open the door and I could just like, you know, boop, follow him in because nobody cares, you know. And yeah, that was like my little secret spot. And I took a couple people there, you know, every now and then where it was like, let's go on this rooftop. Like, I know this rooftop we can hang out on. And like, I don't know, do you have any like secret, like, you know, inner city locations that, don't disclose any locations specifically, but do you have any like secret spots?
Well, I can tell you this, my one favorite secret spot is gone. You know, back before Williamsburg became this shiny glass paradise, there was actually a very seedy waterfront area by Greenpoint and the western part of Williamsburg, right along Kent Avenue. Was not really a spot you would hang out and party at. It was just, but there were a bunch of warehouse lofts over there. Every once in a while, there'd be something going on. Somebody would get the space to have like a rave or an art show or something. Yeah. But mostly just, chemical companies and things and trucks and, big trucks parked there. But where the the L train crosses under the East River there's at either end of the tunnel, there's a ventilation tower. So back before they had kind of built everything up down there was this kind of grimy fence that you had to like kind of crawl under and around, and then you had another fence you had to sort of like know how to jiggle it just right, and the gate would open up, and then you walked around this little ventilation building, and on the other side was this absolutely glorious, unobstructed view of Manhattan.
Oh.
It's like the coolest thing because, there would never be anybody else there. And if there was, it was just somebody that was, was not like a nefarious person looking to mug you or anything. It was just somebody else that knew about it. And you'd be kind of hanging out with a complete stranger like, oh, you like this too, huh? Oh, hey, man. Like, well, what you got? What are you sipping on?
Yeah, totally. It's like, going on like a hike around here and like finding a nice lookout. And it's the same thing. Yeah.
And the bonus was about 3 blocks away, and this is still there, there's a bar called the Turkey's Nest, which in the middle of this, hoity-toity, gentrified, hipster, super cool Brooklyn is this sort of dive bar that I think may or may not have some sort of police department affiliation because they always seem to be open when nobody else is at like 5 in the morning. But they sell, beer in styrofoam cups. So the key move is to go over and get like a 64-ounce styrofoam cup of your favorite beverage, or they also put a mixed drink in there too if you're feeling brave. And the deal was you go over, take a little 3-block walk over to the L train tower, and you could sit there and then have your beer and look at the skyline, and you felt like you were the king of New York, or in your case, the queen of New York.
Yeah.
Or king if you want to be.
That's so lovely. One of the things that I really love about New York, and I still love, I mean, I'm in my 30s now and maybe less inclined to go down and just commit to not sleeping and not coming back that night. But I used to, every so often when I was younger and no longer living there, I would go down and just spend the night with a friend just walking around the city. And it was, you'd never get bored of it. Like there's no end of places to go. And as long as you've got like one other person with you, like there's no real reason to feel unsafe or anything. And we would just walk around. I had a friend one night, we walked over the Brooklyn Bridge from somewhere. I don't even remember where, but we were just, just walking and we're like, oh, here's the bridge. Let's walk over that. And then we walked back and I had other friends that we walked around all night and then watched the sunrise over the East River, and pissed in some bushes. I had so many just all night adventures in the city that I feel like you can't have really anywhere else. I'm thinking about Boston, for example, and my dad lives there, and I went a few years ago and visited him and hit up a friend of mine who lives there, and my friend and I went out drinking after my dad went to bed. And, it got to be midnight, 1 a.m. and we were walking around the city and I was like, all right, where next? Where else can we go? And he was like, that was it. You've seen that's Boston. It. That's all there is.
Well, Boston, in my opinion, Boston and also Philadelphia are New York's cousins. They're all the same age. They've all got the same parent pretty much. They're all kind of from the same, lineage. But they're just the two angry, less cool cousins that show up to the family party every once in a while, and the one gets drunk and pushes over something into pushes over a shelf or a cabinet, and the other one is the one that's just arguing about politics the whole time. That's Boston and Philly.
Yeah.
And New York is the cool, chill cousin that everybody always wants to be, and then talks smack about behind their back, because it's just never going to be as cool as New York.
Yeah, it is.
The other fun thing about New York is that things that we consider to be extremely pedestrian and sort of mundane here, to those that come and visit, it always amazes me to catch people that are from out of town that are amazed by certain things. For example, the concept of walking over the Brooklyn Bridge. It's a tourist attraction, but for some people, it's just a commute to work.
Yeah.
Taking the Staten Island ferry across New York Harbor. Again, it's a tourist attraction that really is just a utility for people to get back and forth from Staten Island. They go to work every day. And one of my personal favorites is Oh, I was with some out of town people one time that were amazed that the delis stayed open all night and had flowers, fresh cut flowers in front of them. They said, why do they have flowers outside, fresh flowers? I said, because this is where we get our flowers from.
Yeah,
We don't have
you want to buy
we don't have a
flowers.
flower field to go to.
I don't want to go to a florist. Like, I just want to buy some flowers.
Yeah, exactly. It's 4 o'clock in the morning because you need to do that when you realize you forgot to call your girlfriend. Say goodnight.
Yeah. I don't know. I do think it suffers from being too cool. I think it suffers from too good of a reputation. I don't know. It's easy to just write off New York and be like, oh, it's gentrified now. It's not. It doesn't have any soul. It doesn't have any life. But like, it still does. And every time I go there, I have a blast and just walking around and like fucking. I don't know. It's. I'm such a tourist now.
I hate to say this because this is something that it's a direct effect of COVID, but for about 3 months, the New York Post every day is saying everybody is leaving New York, everybody's moving out, everybody's moving up to the Hudson Valley. Not everybody. The people that left were honestly the people we kind of can't stand anyway. The people from like the Upper West Side that are always complaining about and reviewing giving restaurants negative reviews on Yelp because they didn't have their favorite type of cheese on the appetizer selection.
Right.
All those people left, and you know what? Thank goodness. Go away because it makes room for the new people that are coming in. Everybody say, well, New York City's done. It's over. It's going to die. It's not going anywhere. New York City's been here since before the Europeans landed their boat on it. There were people living on Manhattan Island.
Yeah.
So New York has been around for a very long time. It's a place that for some reason continues to draw people, whether it was the Algonquin Indians, the Dutch, the British, and everybody that came along after it. It's just something about this place that it's, for lack of a better term, centrally located. Mm-hmm. And, hey, has a couple of cool things going on and a few nice views. And people will always come. There'll always be a mystique to it. So if anything, I think the COVID has actually opened up opportunities for younger people that may not have thought that moving to New York was a possibility. As things start to pick back up, they're going to find cheaper apartments. Just a different kind of scene. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I really don't.
Oh, I totally agree with you there. I mean, I was looking on like Zillow, the real estate sites and stuff. Because like you said, everybody who can, I don't know how to put it. It's not everybody who can. It's like you said, it's like all the people who wanted to left, let's just say, and they've all come up to where I live, and that comes with its own set of problems. I've been salty about it on the podcast before about how, like, I live in Kingston, which has been written up in multiple schmancy magazines as, like, the hot new place for, escaping COVID in the city. So, like, everybody just takes that at face value and comes up here and drives up all the property values, and then none of my friends can buy houses. So anyway, with that comes that kind of yo-yo effect where meanwhile real estate prices are dropping down in the city finally. And I was looking on Zillow one night and there's apartments for sale that technically I could afford. And I'm like, oh my God, like, should I just buy an apartment in New York City and then like wait for the property value to go back up, or should I live there? I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I could live there at this point. I got the partner and the 2 dogs and stuff. I'm not really an apartment dweller anymore, but I don't know. Like, there's a part of me that's like, should I just be thinking about doing that?
It's never too late. I know people that I never forget this. Years ago, I was driving home one night when I was living after I graduated college. I spent a couple of months living at my folks' house in Northport, and I'm driving home one night, and there's an old guy on the side of the road. He had to be in his early 80s, and he's standing next to a car that's just smoking. Car, obviously, something wrong with it. And it was kind of a rainy night. And I see him there. So I pulled over. I said, "Hey, what? Sir, what's going on?" He goes, "Oh, my car. It broke down." I said, "Well, let me give you a ride home. Where do you live?" "Oh, I live about 10 minutes away." I said, "Well, get in. I'll drive you home." Well, I start chatting with this guy, and it turns out that his name was Red Bilkus. I'm sure he's no longer with us because he was pretty old at the time. But he was a tenor saxophone player with Louis Prima's traveling band.
Oh, wow.
So I said, "Oh, I'm a musician." "Oh, you're a musician." So we start chatting about being on the road. And he tells me, "Yeah, my wife just died like 3 weeks ago. She died of, she died of cancer." And but he seemed kind of at peace with it. I said, "Well, what are you going to do?" He said, "Well, I've been living in this house out here in Smithtown for 45 years. And my wife and I lived here. We raised our kids here. I sold the house. It sold within a week. And I'm moving into Greenwich Village. I've always wanted to live in New York City. So I'm getting an apartment at Greenwich Village, and I'm going to go down and be a city guy now. That's going to be my new thing.
Nice.
I said, no way. So I said, this guy's 80 years old, in his early 80s, and he's moving to the city. And sure enough, as I bring him to his house, and I go drop him off. He says, that's right, you're a musician. Hold on a minute. I got something for you. He goes into his house and comes out with a Farfisa keyboard from like 1965 and says, you can have this.
Whoa.
I was like, get the Farfisa. This is sick. So
you still got it?
That worked out pretty well. So
do you still have it?
Absolutely. It's in my collection of keyboards. I have a pretty extensive vintage keyboard collection at an undisclosed location. But at some point, I'll take you to my vault. You can come have a look at it.
I'm curious. Yeah. Do you ever bust them out and play any of them?
They make appearances every so often at CFR gigs, especially when we do the retro stuff. Like when we do the Hall & Oates set, I'll break out one of the appropriate synthesizers.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But, it's funny, talking about an older dude just deciding to up and move to the city late in life. When I was first living there, I remember now it's all kind of flooding back that like my first like couple of months in the city, I didn't really like it, and I kind of had the impression that like all of the older people that I saw seemed so like broken down, and I was like, it's got to be something about like breathing the air here. But I don't know. What do you think about that? Is that crazy?
No, it's not. I mean, it's certainly it's a different kind of lifestyle. It definitely takes a toll on you. There's a lot more you got to kind of be on top of. Whereas if you weren't living over here, it's gonna ride you down a little more. But I think the spirit is definitely. It's maybe a little more complex. I don't know. You're definitely exposed to a kind of more of a frenetic day than you would be, let's say, if you're living up the Adirondacks.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe it's just like the pace of life. But I don't know. Yeah, and it was also like the pace of life can be whatever you want it to be wherever you are. I mean, when I was working at the comic store, that was like what I was doing, and I was, at the time rent wasn't too expensive. I was splitting with my friend, and he was working at Applebee's in Times Square and, serving tourists, but making bank. And yeah, I had other jobs. I had my weirdest ever living situation. I don't even know if I should tell this story because it was definitely not legal. But at one point I wanted to move back, and I was like crashing with a friend, and I wanted to find a place quick because I didn't want to stay on this person's couch forever. And I got a job at a taco place in Midtown in like Murray Hill. And I found this place in the West Village on Craigslist, and it was advertised as like a 2-bedroom, private room, share with this person who lived there, in the basement of this building in the West Village. And it was like right off of Washington Square Park. It was like just a crazy, crazy location, right? So I go to see it, and I'm like, maybe 20 years old at this point. And it's this lady, she's like a Filipino lady, and she has to come out and meet me because she doesn't have a key for the building, and had to do this whole like song and dance with like calling somebody to get buzzed in. It was like the sketchiest shit. And she takes me out onto the fire escape and down a secret door and down into this like what was absolutely a boiler room. Like just straight up the boiler room. It was like she had a bed in a corner with a curtain. She had like a hot plate to cook on, little mini fridge. She had like this bathroom situation that, again, there was a lot of curtains involved. It was like there was plumbing. There was like a toilet and a shower, but it was literally like on a platform surrounded by a curtain. It was fucking bananas. The boiler was in the apartment. It's not even an apartment. It was a fucking boiler room with a boiler there. And then there was like this separate weird little room with no windows, and and she was like, she wanted to rent it out for like, $500 a month or something. And I was like, okay, all right. Like, you know what? I need a place to live. I need it to be cheap. I don't give a fuck. I can put up with some weirdness. I was 20 at the time. I was like, I don't care. Let's do it. And I was living there I didn't last long. I lasted like a couple of months, mostly because she was bonkers. Like, she turned out to be like, obviously, I mean, in retrospect, like with 11 years of experience on myself, I'm like, duh, like this fucking person was crazy, of course. But, but the place itself, as weird and, slapdash as the living situation was. I had all my clothes like on a fucking pipe just hanging there, and like it was fucking bizarre. But the trade-off was I walked out the door and I was in the West Village, and I would, walk from there to my little job in Murray Hill, and like I spent a couple of months really not hating life. Like if it weren't for the roommate, like I would have probably put up with it longer. But yeah, that is probably the strangest place I've ever lived, was that apartment.
That sounds about par for the course. I mean, people have all sorts of unique living situations, especially when you're in a place that has such high rents.
Yeah.
You can find all sorts of creative spaces to tuck yourself into. I remember there was a place around the corner from my house in Greenpoint called the McKibben Lofts, otherwise known as the Art Dorm. That was sort of the unofficial name for it. And it was just this definitely kind of illegal setup with these kind of homemade loft apartments. I remember there was one couple that was living there in like little cubicles. Like they would just sort of slide themselves into these cubicles at night, and that was like their little bedroom. It was looked like a coffin almost. So people get very creative when they when they need to.
Yeah, and have many roommates when they need to. I mean, yeah, like I was lucky. I really I lived with that lady. I lived with my friend. I had a couple like temporary crash pads down there, but I never really did the 6 people stacked in a living room thing, which I know some of my friends did.
Oh yeah. I was kind of wanted to try that out for at least a year. The opportunity never came up, but I think that would have been kind of fun. I had a friend that lived in one of those kind of like it was a top floor of an industrial building, and they had like 8 bedrooms, and I think there were like 2 people to a bedroom. Like they had the people that would be the morning, that they were there during the day when the other person was working at night.
Yeah.
They were switching back and forth.
Oh, that's crazy.
Called it the squeak shop because you always hear mattresses squeaking anytime you were in there, any time of day. There was some sort of squeaking of mattresses for whatever reason.
For whatever reason. Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned the Adirondacks too, because the most people I've lived with in the smallest amount of space was in the Adirondacks the summer I was interning up there, and we had a studio apartment, and we were interns, so we squeezed 3 of us in there. It was me and 2 straight men. Which was exciting, but we actually had a great summer. We all got along well and had a lot of good times, and one or the other of us would frequently be out like in the woods, for our internship. So it wasn't like we were always all 3 of us there, but yeah, we had 2 beds, and then one of us would sleep on the floor. We would rotate.
You could make it work. People can be very versatile. You just have to expand your parameters a little bit, and you can really come up with some great ideas.
Yeah, especially when you're young. I mean, of course, and like I don't mean to sound like a fucking privileged asshole. Like, oh, it was so fun when that's some people like that's how they got to live to get by. But I was lucky that it was a temporary experience for me, because I do like my space.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so you're that classification of people that you definitely got into Kingston at a good time, or that area, and you have a nice space now, and you can call it your own, and it's a totally different experience than living in the basement in the boiler room, and carbon monoxide involuntarily at 3:00 in the morning on a Tuesday.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's pretty much our hour, Andy. What do you want to plug? What should we? You got some music to sell or anything?
Well, right now we're a little bit of a production. We're ramping production back up. That's actually we're getting together Sunday, so we're going to be discussing finally completing some stuff we have in the can.
But that would be great. Yeah, we started that months ago.
Yeah, we're gonna finally get that scheduled for that to get finished. So I know I keep saying, well, the next couple of months you'll hear some new material, but I actually mean it this time. We've slowly been assembling the necessary materials and tracks and getting everything organized. So
yeah, I mean, I've been in the band for like 3 years, and I'm not on any recordings yet, so we should fix that.
I think it's about time to get that done. And really, I mean, I just would encourage everybody here, if you have somebody who's playing in a band, or if any of our CFR compatriots, Dave Chapman, Chris Macchia, Brad Kelly, and obviously yourself, of our little intimate regulars group. There's a lot of side projects going on. I know Dave's got things happening. Chris has things happening. Brad's been playing with a bunch of different bands. So go support the music when you can. Even if you're just doing it online, click on a stream, send a couple of bucks to one of your friends on their Venmo tip jar, but do it, because there's some people that are doing this full time. They're doing the music thing full time, and they need your help and they need your support. So that's my plug, is to take a moment, pick who your favorite musical friends are, and send them $10 on Venmo. It's a little thing you could do that'll go a very long way for somebody else. I mean, don't you agree?
Yeah, well said. Good plug.
And also continue listening to your favorite podcast, which should be this one.
Yeah, I agree. Couldn't agree more. It's the best podcast in the world.
I concur.
Thanks, Andy. I'll see you Sunday.
You got it. Looking forward to it.
Thanks for listening to More Music Please Quarantine Beat. Follow the show on Instagram at moremusic.podcast and check out the website moremusicpodcast.com for new episodes. Questions or comments, email moremusic.podcast@gmail.com. Thanks to DJ Scully, Michael Cadnar, and James Stewart for the catchy theme song you're hearing now. I'm MK Burnell. Talk to you next time.